I'm Allison Jonjak, the Cranberry Outreach Specialist with the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. These videos are the on-demand recordings of UW Extension and the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association's virtual brown bag lunch series. These monthly sessions offer growers and researchers a way to share timely and relevant information. We hope you'll enjoy and continue to engage with us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grant Holly. I'm the Executive Director of the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association. We are very happy to be able to partner with UW Extension to bring you the research needed to be able to navigate our ever-changing environment. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today for their valuable time and leadership, the growers for joining us, and Allison for being the catalyst from which all of these sessions rely. Thank you so much.
All right, and I'll let folks in. Good morning, everyone. And right as we cross over into afternoon, I will advance our slides right here through the introduction. And I'm still working on getting the captions to display. As we kind of said, if Microsoft Azure has 2/3 of the airplanes down and our captions aren't working, we're still way ahead of the curve. So I'll get that solved before our speakers are presenting. Wanted to quickly go through our agenda. Steve Vavrus is with UW-Madison as well as being the Wisconsin State Climatologist, and he's going to give us an overview of the wet weather patterns that we've had thus far this year and a little bit of prospective into the future. Don Valentine since Leslie's unavailable, Don at Oregon State University is going to give some updates on a project that he's working on with Leslie, the same project, and discuss fruit rots and their sensitivities to fungicides. And then we'll wrap up the lunch hour with Jed Cahoon talking about weed growth stages and weed wiping. As usual, if you have questions for clarification during the presentation, feel free to mute yourself and ask, or unmute yourself and ask, or you can use the chat box to ask. If you want to ask anonymously, use the drop down and say your question only to Allison Jonjak, and I'll ask it anonymously on your behalf. If you we'll also have a question and answer session at the end, so feel welcome to use both of those. I am going to, is Grant here to give us a quick hello from the Growers Association? And if Grant is not, I will still at least say, as I'm with the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension, but this is brought to us both by UW-Madison Division of Extension as well as the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association. So thanks to everyone who supports this and is getting information from here, and we're always welcoming feedback as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Steve. Steve, I will let you share your screen, and then I'll keep working on those captions in the background.
All right. Thanks, Allison. So does this mean I get Grant's time?
Got it. Yep.
All right. So I won't have to rush as much. So what's up with Wisconsin's weather? This is going to be looking backwards a few months and then looking ahead a few months. And even though I posed the question of what's up with the weather, the real question is what's down. And what's down has been rain, and lots of it, at least in our state and in neighboring states. And scenes like the ones below have become very common since spring. Both flooded roads, flooded fields, destruction from tornadoes and severe storms and the like. It seems like every few days we've been hit with another round. And to put some data behind those to show how wet it's been, this has been the wettest May-June period on record in Wisconsin. And that data go back to 1895. So this is really something. And the reason it's been the wettest is because we've had a combination of the 10th wettest May and the 6th wettest June on record. And it's been raining both frequently and hard. Some very high daily amounts, over 4 inches in places. And then Madison at the Dane County Regional Airport just this past weekend set a record for the hourly rainfall rate of 2¼ inches, which is astounding during a strong thunderstorm that night. And parts of south central Wisconsin are nearing their normal annual precipitation totals. And here we are still in the middle of July. So some remarkable wetness in our state. And I mentioned how hard it's been raining in places. This is a map that shows the heaviest precipitation amount on any given day since the beginning of May. It's color coded so that the oranges and light yellow are indicating less than 3 inches, which is mostly in the north. And then anything in green is 3 inches or heavier. And so you see that there are areas, kind of a band in western and south central Wisconsin, where we've had plenty of places that have picked up 3 or more inches of rain in a day. And to keep score here on the right, these are the top 10 daily rainfalls across Wisconsin from June, July, Hartford being the very top at 5.3 inches. But you see going down the list, there are a bunch of stations that have picked up over 4 inches. And to put this into perspective, our average monthly rainfall in June and July is between 4 and 5 inches. So when we get this much in a day, it's like getting a month's worth of rainfall typically for that month, and it all happens in a day or shorter. And even more impressive, I think, is when we look at the accumulation of rainfall. So this is showing the past 2 months of rainfall going back to mid-May. And the areas in orange are those with 15 to 20 inches. And that's mostly central Wisconsin. Here's Green Bay and Eau Claire to orient you, and places south. And what's super impressive is the areas in red. These are mostly in south central Wisconsin. These are 20 to 25 inches of rainfall in 2 months. That's around 2 feet in 2 months, just an astounding amount. And that's the reason we've had so much flooding on our fields and roads and so forth. But you do notice that as you progress farther north, the amounts are more modest, typically 10 to 15 inches, in some places even less than 10. So it does depend where in the state you are, but basically everybody's been wet, some places a lot wetter than others. Not surprisingly, all that rainfall has meant a tremendous amount of soil moisture. So our soils around Wisconsin are very soggy right now. What I'm showing here is the soil moisture in the top meter of the soil expressed as a percentile. So looking at the historical record, showing where we are relative to long-term other years. And anything in blue means that we're in the top 2% of soil moisture. So it's extremely wet. And that's about half the state right now. And it's not just in one area, it's covering a good swath of Wisconsin. And even the areas in green are upwards of 90th percentile. So the top 5, top 10% of all years or data points, we're as wet or wetter than those. So really remarkable just how wet it's been, or have translated into wet soils here. Now, conversely, our temperatures have been pretty typical, at least in July. This is showing the monthly temperature departures from average for July. And it's striking how little how typical, I guess, they are. The yellows being anywhere from normal to just a degree above normal, and the greens being anywhere from normal to a degree below. If you average it across the state, we're right about the long-term average for July for temperature. Now, that's not quite the case as we go back in time. We had a record warm winter and then a warm spring. And I would say it's been consistently but quietly warm in our state since the spring. Showing here the departures from normal since the first day of spring through now. The warm colors being warmer than normal, so yellow, orange, and red. And you see that pretty much the farther east you go and the farther south you go in Wisconsin, the bigger those numbers get. So the reds are anywhere from 1.5 degrees to 2.5 degrees warmer than normal since the beginning of spring. And really only in a small area in northern Wisconsin do we see even slightly below normal temperatures. And for example, when you look at the monthly anomalies since April and May were both a couple degrees above normal. So, noteworthy, but not a huge departure. And then June was more modest at 0.5 degrees. So again, consistently warm, helping to mean more development for cranberries and other crops, but nothing to really write home about in terms of our temperatures. But what is, I think, striking is that despite the fact that we've been consistently warm since the beginning of spring, it has not translated much into hot weather. Unlike the rest of the country, this map is showing the highest temperature recorded in 2024, and it's colored so that the oranges are 90 and above. And what you see is basically it's just been in the south where we've had hot weather above 90 degrees so far this year. The bluish colors are 88 degrees or less for the maximum temperature in the year. Not surprising in Door County, but surprising elsewhere in the state. Now, this is a gridded data product, meaning that there's some spatial smoothing involved. So there are certain locations where you might have found a 90 degree, like La Crosse, I know, is at 90. But basically, it makes the point that despite the warmth, the consistent warmth, we've not had much hot weather yet this year. Still plenty of time for that to change, though. So that was my retrospective analysis. And now the look ahead. Where are we going? Where do we think we're going in the next few weeks to months? The Weather Service is suggesting that our dry weather pattern that's just finally emerged this week will probably continue for at least the next 7 days. This is the estimated total precipitation amount for the next 7 days. Green indicates half an inch or less, and that's most of Wisconsin. So that's good news if we want our fields to finally dry out. It does look like high pressure is likely to be in control of our weather pattern. So I think this is a believable map, although don't take to the bank the exact numbers here, but it is indicative of a likely dry week ahead. When we look ahead further to late July, the last week of July for temperature and precipitation, the Weather Service expresses these as probabilities rather than a definite number. And the warm colors here for temperature, this is valid for the final week of July. These indicate higher probabilities than typical for warm conditions. So basically, the darker the orange or red, the more likely it is that Wisconsin will be warmer than normal. And if you look carefully, if you can read this, the probabilities here in the bottom, so the light orange color, anywhere from 1/3 to 40% likely, and then the next category, 40 to 50% and 50 to 60%. So better than rolling the dice that it's likely to be a warm final week in July. On the other hand, the precipitation outlook signal is pretty weak. The gray indicates kind of equal chances of wet or dry or near normal. And with most of Wisconsin, just barely in the next category, leaning toward a bit of a wet week at the end of July. And if we extend this out further for August, the projections just came out yesterday for the month of August. And they're indicating that most of the country will see a warm, if not hot August, especially if you go out west or in the east. And we're sandwiched in between, but we're still leaning toward a warm month of August, but not hugely so, in the sort of 33 to 40% category for most of the state. But no clear signal in terms of how the precipitation will fare in August. So equal chances of a wet, dry, or near normal month of August for precipitation. And if we go out further still, October or August through October, same kind of format, temperature and precipitation. It does look like will probably be, or at least leaning toward a warm period from August through October, but this is not a strong signal for Wisconsin. It is for the West and New England, but again, it's just an indication that probably we're leaning toward the warm side for those months. But once again, no clear signal in terms of precipitation, equal chances of wet, dry, or near normal for the end of summer and beginning of fall. Okay, so with that weather discussion, I now want to finish off with my remaining couple of minutes here, just giving a little bit of an overview of our state climatology office because it has been revitalized with some funding through USDA. We also have a new set of partners now who are supporting it, that being the UW-Madison Department of Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences, our Division of Extension, and the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. We've revamped our website in the last year. We encourage you to try it out. A lot of people come here for the data products, which are updated every day, but we also have information on research, and we even have an agricultural page that you might be interested in, keeping track of growing degree days and so forth. And I do want to point out also for this audience that the State Climatology Office is part of a broader Rural Partnerships Institute at the university through the USDA funding. And the mission of that is to maintain the social and economic vitality of rural communities. So this speaks to agriculture, your world. And not only is the State Climatology Office within this RPI cloud, but we also have this new Wisconsin environmental MesoNet, also called WiscoNet, that I'll get into in the final slide, a statewide network of weather and soil monitoring stations. And then the final component of the Rural Partnerships Institute is a set of community research and outreach projects, which I don't have time to discuss today, but you can find it on the website. And then I'll close by letting you know about WiscoNet, if you don't already, because it's very relevant for your operations. This is something Wisconsin has needed for many, many years. About half the states have a good MesoNet network in place, which complements the airport weather stations and cooperative weather stations. WiscoNet currently has about 36 of these stations deployed. And the plan is to have one per county, all 72 Wisconsin counties represented in the next 2 years. And some counties get an abundance, like Door County already has a bunch more than one station to support the fruit growers there. Parts of southern Wisconsin have their fair share, but there are gaps, and those gaps are going to fill soon. But when you go to the WiscoNet site, you get real time, meaning up to 5-minute updates of various weather data, temperature, accumulated precipitation, but also soil temperature, soil moisture, leaf wetness, solar energy, and so forth. So it's a really great resource. It really speaks to the here and now of what's our weather doing. If you want to track drought, you can look at the past few months. So it's a great resource. If you don't know about it already, I think it's certainly of interest to anyone in the agricultural world in our state. So I will stop here and stop sharing, and be happy to take questions now if we have time, or you can put them in the chat, however you want to organize things, Allison.
Yeah, we do have 2-ish minutes before we have to move forward for the next round. So if people have questions, now is a great time to ask questions. I know we kind of staged this brown bag such that we'd have the local weather perspective and then kind of the broad, because weather is such a key driver of our disease management, that we'd had those two fit together, since that has been a topic of a lot of discussion. So until I see other questions coming in, yes, let's usually we have plenty, and I think a lot of people have seen a very wet spring, and of course for cranberry growers there's then less need to irrigate for evapotranspiration losses, and a greater focus on drainage and making sure that everyone has dry feet. Any growers have any questions for us here? And if not, I know that was very good to hear the future perspective of as well. Possibly a little bit warmer, but then not a clear read on whether it'll be wetter or drier. So definitely appreciate that to help us brace ourselves for what August might hold. I think we often will continue to get questions over the course of the session. So if you're able to stick around and be here for the end as well, but I will thank you for that.
Sure.
Thank you very much for presenting, and I'll be monitoring the chat to help ask questions on people's behalf. Otherwise, I want to thank Steve, as well as Don, as well as Jed, for giving us these great in-season updates, and anyone having any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we're going to look forward to seeing you at the summer field day in August 14th at Cutler, Cranberry, and City Point. Last minute for any questions. Thank you all for joining today.